event at NECA, well, in Abuja, NECA's event in Abuja, where they were talking about employment generally and all. And, you know, something caught my attention, guys, about that conversation that was had. And everyone had that consensus at the meeting that Nigeria needs to do something about its trade and non-oil export programs, specifically saying that we should not just export jobs, according to the Executive Secretary of the NEPC, but that we should add value at home so as to create jobs, bolster employment. And we all know that that's a significant problem in our country. The question is how. At that event also, Dr. Adesina spoke through the Nigeria representative of the AFDB, saying that, look, one thing that can certainly bolster employment in the country is to ensure that we get our power supply system right. And we all know that how significant a challenge that is. You know, a number of people spoke along that line. But, you know, the challenge remains for those who are in the private sector. All of their issues are not unknown to every single one of us. The issues are always staring us in the face. And quite a number of people will raise issues around electricity, bottlenecks at the ports, and substandard products generally. So when the Executive Secretary of the NEPC was talking about us not exporting jobs by making sure that we follow through with processing, with value addition in country, yeah, it lines up with what the president said on Inauguration Day about value-added processing and all. But then the challenges remain for those who are in the private sector. They are not talking about things that are unknown to us. Just 2 months ago, the NASIMA and CPPE were complaining about the fact that Nigeria's earnings from non-oil exports have dropped by 2%. That is something that is significant. But the challenge of employment, or a lack of it, is very, very significant, and it's not something that we can just roughshod. The question then is, what is to be done? The federal government has its job cut out for it, but it's in the states that the private sectors operate, the companies operate. What are the things that are being done to encourage or frustrate this, so that the people who are having challenges with employment and poverty, its ally, they help us to reduce the numbers and make our nation better? Bukola.
Indeed, Ayo, but we must look critically, at the process and find out what are the challenges, what are the factors militating against the value addition process. What are the things that encourage, exporters to export raw materials, and thereby take away employment, those job opportunities that are very critical to the development of our economy outside our shores. And you've identified one of them, which is the power problem. It is the bane of the manufacturing sector in the country. And we can begin to look at, maybe just a few of those items. Cocoa, where are the off-takers of that natural resources? They are nowhere near, those manufacturing the raw materials. A lot of people would rather import all those exotic, what do they call it now? Finished products of cocoa, which is chocolate. Which is chocolate. We can talk about cassava. Cassava has quite a number of byproducts. You can use it for seasoning, you can use it for fufu, you can use it for gari. There is also that very huge possibility of cassava bread. But where are the off-takers of the raw materials, of the byproducts of cassava? They are importing wheat from outside the country, into Nigeria. We can also mention quite a number of the others, So tomato is one of them also. Manufacturers would rather import dried tomatoes, which is one of the raw materials for the manufacturing of tomato paste. So, and then the farmers are not on the farms as a result of, the security challenge. So these are some of the challenges. We must deal with our appetite for exotic products. Besides that, we must also make that sector, convenient, comfortable for the manufacturers to thrive. These are some of the issues. Pastor Ito was saying yesterday that we must just tax imported goods rather than, taxing the workers who are finding it so very difficult within the economy in the first place to thrive. So these are some of the issues that the new administration must look into.
But perhaps the challenge right now is, what is it that has been militating against this local production that we're talking about here? I mean, you've mentioned a few of them, but how about these industrial zones all over the country? Do we have them? I mean, you're talking about off-takers. The off-takers are essentially supposed to be something that should be facilitated by the federal government itself. But when the government is talking about value addition to some of these products, the question is, what are the things that have hindered us from until now? We've always had our strength in cocoa. We've always had our strength in groundnuts and the peas and all of those things. We've always had our strength in cassava. We've always had our strength in yam. We've always had our strength in soya beans, in sesame, in honey. The quantum of honey imported into this country is sickening. We've always had our strength in rubber. The question is, why is it taking us this long to even consider that this value addition process is not just something that is possible, but that's easy for us to take on?
Well, manufacturers, first of all, must be sited in proximity to where the raw materials are being produced. So what are the challenges militating against that? Transportation is one of them. Infrastructure is one of them. Water supply, which aids manufacturing, is one of them. If those infrastructure are not available, readily available within the area where the raw material is produced, then manufacturers will be discouraged, and those all-important jobs will be exported outside the country.
Let's not finish the conference here.
Yeah. Let's take it to Abuja.
Well, it looks like the conference is already exhausted, right? Because what's there to add again? I mean, you've talked about how the federal government oftentimes sets the policy, but it is the states that have lead role in implementation. And oftentimes, a lot of states have not really sat down to ask themselves, how do we make our environment even more conducive to business? You talked, I think, last administration, we had the ease of doing business, which was a very big priority for that particular administration. And we also saw a situation where states were rated, and I think, was it Jigawa State that came first? Was it Jigawa or Gombe? Those are the states that were coming first in terms of their ease of doing business. Those are states that had taken it seriously enough to perhaps harmonize taxes, make it easy to register businesses, and provide a number of sundry facilities to ensure that businesses were able to thrive in those states. It'll be very interesting to go and see how easy it has been for businesses, or whether that has attracted businesses to those states, knowing that they have made it quite easy for businesses to be registered or, to do business in their state. And for the states that are not doing so well, I wonder if they're asking themselves deep questions as to why are we, bottom of this particular table? What exactly is militating against our being ranked one of the best in the ease of doing business? What are some of the things that we can do to make it easier for businesses? First of all, I think it will be worthy to salute those who have had the courage to set up businesses. They know just what it is that they have decided to take on, especially when the business is manufacturing or when it is services. I mean, as Bukola said, that has to do with electricity, or would demand the use of electricity, or would demand the use of transportation, looking at the state of our roads. There are so many factors, yet people still dare, and they make successes of their businesses. Those people need to be saluted in a very special way, because people can moan all they like about how the inflation is taking away all of their salaries, but I am fortunate that I have a salary in the very first instance. There are those who do not even have jobs. And when you think about the fact that if no one dared to have set up a business like the one I'm currently working in or working at, where would many Nigerians get the jobs that they currently have today? There's so many people who are out on the streets who do not have jobs because so many more people have not had the courage to dare to set up those businesses, and it is because of the environment. Like, who wants to grow old before their time? I look at a lot of business leaders. A lot of them have plenty of gray hair that could have been avoided. But I do hope that it won't just be talk. I hope that, whatever it is that NECA is discussing with government will be something that will truly, accelerate you know, the setting up of businesses that would encourage business to bloom and thrive in our country. We cannot be the country that kills businesses. We cannot be the country where businesses that are planted die. We have to be the country where when businesses are conceived and planted like seeds, they're nurtured and encouraged to bloom. That's the sort of country that we need to be. We cannot be the country that are counting just a few businesses thriving. We have the potential to, you know, get many more businesses to thrive. So I think that state executives and even local governments, wherever it is that they're functional, because that's a very need to ask themselves that question. How are we encouraging businesses to thrive within our locality? That
is a very big one, and that's why they all encourage us all to get very, very interested right from the grassroots, the local government, not just looking to the presidency, because you make a lot of impact in this regard if we collectively look to those areas. There's several examples of countries who did that. I mean, Hong Kong happens to be one of the very interesting ones. So the young people just aggregated themselves, moved in there, went in from the local government area because they got a plan. They're just moving gradually. They're looking at the bigger picture. I mean, that's massive, fantastic bottom-up approach. And I say that because, I mean, doing business is goodness. There was a rude awakening in the FCT. AMAC, boy, they said, look, if you're aware of those chaps, it's the beginning of wisdom for you because...
And that's local government.
Local government, because when you drive certain vehicles that have got logos and things like that, the way they pounce on you, you will think that these guys are thugs or robbers. And if you were countries that people are allowed to bear arms with licenses on the roads, many of them would have been lying on the street because they approach you and then you think, what's going on here? So those kind of things, it's not just in Abuja with AMAC. I mean, different states have similar approach. The thugs, they unleash on the roads to do businesses. Why won't business folks have grey hairs? The environment, a lot needs to be done. But speaking of which, as at 2020, the NBS did put up a data which says about 34.9% of young people aged between 15 and 34 are unemployed in this country. That's a lot. And yes, we always remind ourselves, they live in their states. And you know what? The president did recently sign that electricity law which says states, companies and individuals can generate, transmit and distribute electricity. So states who have just come in as new governors, this is a very important area that they should leverage on. Yes, it's always a job of work to focus on state assemblies or call them out and ensure that they hold their governments accountable with the resources and publish their budgets. Many, if you even get to see it, it will be a lot. So yes, we need to, as well as focus on the federal government, the states as well are very important in the scheme of things, because if we all need to ensure that things move right here, we have to do it all collectively. And remember, those funds belong to not just them, you and I. So there is absolutely nothing wrong in asking questions, and more questions. Anybody can disagree with you, it doesn't matter, but you have to get answers, because if you don't, remember, it might be worse off at the end of the day. So, speaking of which, look at the Vanguard newspaper here and how they seem to highlight, well, they are highlighting what transpired. Part of that went on yesterday. Corruption's ugliest phase was under Buhari, says Kuka. Yeah, there's a big one on the front page here. And for government, that, you know, one of the tripods was fight against corruption. They had a huge mantra on corruption. Almost, I mean, previous governments, almost all of them say the same thing. I'm not sure this government did say anything about, I'm not sure it's one of their lead roles, but corruption, ugliest phase was under Buhari, says Kuka. Laments Nigeria sharing sovereignty with bandits, terrorists. And then the nation cannot afford to be immune or just not care about. Some killings went on over the weekend in Jos, in Benue. Young men just being mowed down like that. We're still looking into the NSA and the IGP and security service chiefs. They need to ensure that this is unacceptable. We cannot continue the way we are going with those killings people should know that, look, no one is above the law. And then the other writer says, Nigerians have lost faith in judiciary. Wow. We won't join issues with him. Buhari's aides. Falana cautions Tinubu against sending wrong signals on anti-corruption fight. Notes some visitors to the villa in court for looting. We have no democracy that delivers dividends to the people. Obasanjo. Sitting judges should not preside over election tribunals. Afe Babalola. This is an interesting one. Maybe we'll ask a lawyer when we start that conversation about what they think of sitting judges presiding over election petition tribunals. It might just be interesting. You never know, really. And then presidential poll. APC already preparing for rerun. Ascribed to LP. Don't forget to go to the back page. There's a lot of interesting sporting stories there. Osimhen to replace Mbappe at PSG. Woo. So there you go. That's Vanguard this morning.
Well, The Guardian has this on the front page. It's dealing more with the economy this morning. Nigeria flares $3.9 billion gas in 4 years amid pollution, revenue leakage concerns. That's what The Guardian has on the front page for you. You see it right there, the picture of gas flaring to buttress what it is that they're talking about. Nigeria flares $3.9 billion gas in 4 years amid pollution, revenue leakage concerns. Page 6 is where we'll find details, just in case. And they also have some infometrics for you right there on the front page as well. I do know that I think the president just recently signed some floating, or let's say commissions, floating LNG. Yeah, some floating LNG companies, you know, perhaps they will be able to help solve problems like this, because apparently it does appear that our NLNG, successful as it is, still, you know, doesn't have the capacity to take up all of the gas that is being flared from the Niger Delta, from the places that are, you know, producing this oil. And that's money going to waste. So hopefully somebody is taking a look at this and seeing how it is that we can stop this money. It's like burning money. Whenever you see the gas being flared, that's just money. Might as well just put up some dollars and begin to smoke them up in the air. Well, sadly, that's what it is. Look at this. Now, PDP governors meet as internal crisis heightens. They have that for you. And why Nigeria remains country of concern in obnoxious wildlife trade. Just in case you're wondering, stories on page 4. It's a news analysis. EcoBank urges FBN against ratifying Otudeko's share acquisition. That's in business for those who have been following the story between Femi Otedola and Oba Otudeko. You might want to see what this is about on page 15 of the paper, but this is also about the chairman who becomes the chairman of First Bank Holdings. That's a very big one there. Of FBN, yeah, FBN. Why am I calling them First Bank? FBN Holdings, sorry, First Bank. You also see this here, case against pension payment to former governors. A very interesting perspective awaits you on page 12 of the paper. But we'll also be focusing on that particular issue here today on Sunrise Daily. If you'll stay tuned, I'll have a former governor for you who's currently a senator. But page 12 of the Guardian newspaper also has something interesting. Let's leave it there for the Guardian.
And flip to Daily Independent. Daily Independent also leads with a story that has to do with the economy this morning, and it's quite compelling. This is it, $3.2 billion customs project seen plunging Nigeria into debt trap. Something about the customs e-modernization project being a drain pipe that will drain resources rather than improve the economy. But just in case you're interested in details, it's a page. Well, the page is not quite clear yet, but you find it on the inside pages of Daily Independent. There are quite a number of stories also under the big story, some on politics and the others on the economy. FAN Committee on Cargo laments low freight by air. just one out of the many consequences of, the challenges in the aviation sector. There's this one as well. Ailing Governor Akeredolu extends medical leave indefinitely. And just before that leave commenced, we heard that he handed over the reins of power to his deputy. We wish the governor a quick recovery and that he returns, to Ondo State soon to take over the reins of power yet again. Ohaneze, Southeast political leaders to meet Tinubu over insecurity. And that's it. Let's leave it there for Daily Independent.
About time that meeting took place, actually, because, the Southeast, we've talked about it quite often here. And I'm really glad, though, that the police decided to weigh in by, arresting some people. But how sure are we? That it's Nigeria, and a number of people will be wondering, are those the people that were, really fomenting the trouble? But look at this Nigeria.
If it can be sustained.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This Nigeria newspaper has this one on its front page this morning, pretty much talking about the same story that Chamberlain took earlier. Buhari's government most corrupt, says Kuka. Stories on page 4. Look at the writers. Federal lawmakers, huge pay, unconstitutional, immoral, says Obasanjo. I want to believe that this has been the same thing since 1999. So what happened during the Obasanjo government? Question arises. Afe Babalola clocks 60 at bar. Hey, 60 at bar, meaning he's been a lawyer for 60 years. He's not 60 years old.
That's a colossus of experience.
He's not 60 years old. Be warned. And he says, warns 7 judges against presiding in election petitions tribunal. Well, that's something for lawyers to be interested in. Stories on page 4. Court stops prosecution of suspended Dadamawa wreck. Stories on page 14. Again, Binani sues INEC over nullification of declaration. I wonder how INEC is coping with all these litigations. But this is interesting and something for concern, not just in the state concerned here, but in other states as well. Edo NMA to Obaseki. No light, no water in hospitals. That story is on page 10. I remember seeing a kind of a circular circulated to a particular hospital that, look, we're going to ration the use of our generators at daytime. A hospital, not a hotel.
That sets off my imagination, Ayo. I'm wondering what's going to be happening in intensive care units where surgeries are being conducted. What's going to be happening in CS sections where women's lives, mothers' lives have to be saved, and that of their children, where there is no power supply,
so,
to aid this process.
Questions are limitless there, but this is rationing electricity in a hospital, not in a hotel. Please underscore. That's this Nigerian newspaper today.
Okay, take a look at New Telegraph next. Fuel pump price may rise further in Nigeria as Russia plans new output cuts. This is certainly not what anybody wants to see here, because if at 540 naira in some states, 600 almost, if not more in some others, who wants pump price hike?
There's a market. I mean, is that what we're doing now?
Well, that market had better be ready for another market, because, well, this is the lead story on the front page here.
Well, is it that you do not understand what the regulation meant?
Well, I don't want to even understand at this point, because you're telling me,
oh dear,
because no matter what happens, my pocket does not want to understand. So.
But that's what he says. I mean, if the price of crude goes up and your dollar has been floated,
well, we'll see.
The market shall respond accordingly.
We'll see how some of these things play out, because if they are saying, look, they leave it to the vagaries of the markets. Look at some of the riders now. Tompolo's Tantita Security intercepts massive vessel with stolen crude. Again, NNPCL confirms seizure of 800,000-litre capacity vessel with stolen product. Main oil thieves, iron dudes scooping oil with jerry cans, traditional roller. PCFPT chair urges FG to suspend 7.5% VAT on diesel. It goes on and on. And there are just several questions about some of these things going on, because, well, they're saying that they caught them the immediate questions would be, when they came through and got there and were loading, what was going on? I thought they say we now have facilities to ensure that no one goes under the radar with some of these things. Well, I know you may say, well, at least they've been caught. Who knows? Yeah, but there are several issues on this matter. This is just one of them. So we'll see what happens, if they're going to be involved in fixing that price band the next time out, or is it just we just wait one day and then you hear, oh, the price is according to the dollar, this has gone up and back. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of the day. Then they also have their own feature. Buhari's government amplify corruption morally, financially, ascribed to Kuka. Say the rest, some of the other dailies have highlighted here this morning. So that's New Telegraph this morning.
Well, Daily Trust has this on the front page. ACF, GNI can condemn Plateau killings. Yes, something that Chamberlain has highlighted consistently since yesterday. You find details on page 4 of the paper. So you do have these bodies raising their voices in condemnation of the current killings currently happening in Plateau and also in Benue as well. 8-month-old baby, 7 others killed in fresh attack. You can hear, I mean, it doesn't spare anybody. If you say, oh, it was because we were attacked as well, or, you know, did an 8-month-old baby attack you? The kind of mindless killings that are currently happening, you know, is mind-boggling. You find details somewhere on page 4 of the paper. Warring communities give conditions for peace. Victims must be compensated. Perpetrators punished. That's according to a forum. That death toll rises to 30 in Benue. Just in case you're wondering, it's not 30 chickens or 30 people. I mean, it just looks as if we normalize these things when they happen, as if we're numb to some of it. This is not normal. Listen to it on a daily basis, After a while, there is only so much that you can feel. But, you know, if we're able to just put ourselves in the situation of these people, these villagers, perhaps again we might be able to rouse that feeling of empathy. The fact that people are just helpless. They have no future. They're not safe in their communities, and that's all that they've ever known. It's like, you know, you're trying to go home and then you're told you can't go there again because, you know, some people are trying to hound you out, and it doesn't matter whether you're a 5-month-old baby or, you know, you're a pregnant woman, or whether you're a man, a young person, graduate, manage to go to school. It doesn't matter. Futures don't matter to them. Oh, yeah. I don't know. It's really something we have on our hands and we have to deal with. Page 4 is where you get to see details. You also see there, Aileen Akeredolu extends medical leave indefinitely. It does appear that, well, we hope that he gets better soon, to be honest. Page 25 is where you find details. APC crisis, uncertainty over Adamu's fate. So you have some politics right there as well. But maybe something to cheer. Such a deary story. Look at this. Exporters target 3.1 trillion naira from hibiscus flowers to Mexico. Now,
sounds good.
It's not hibiscus, the red flower, you know. That's not it. It's zobo, eh? the one we call zobo. It does appear that it's, you know, gained value on the international market.
That's
and
lovely.
they're looking
good to hear.
Yes, to export this to Mexico. So find details on page. You know, that's why these things are so expensive now. You go to the market, just small packets like this is now 1,000 naira if you're lucky. Zobo, things we used to take for granted. Cola nuts, bitter cola. You can't just buy them like that anymore. They're so expensive now. That's because people are beginning to realize the value of these things and know that they can earn Forex from it. So 3.1 trillion naira is the target from exporting the flowers to Mexico. So why not? You want to take up the idea of farming? Just wondering, Ayo, Bukola.
But hey, if you take out all of our zobo, what are we going to be drinking? Anyway, take up your pill.
Well, I think we're back to where we're coming back to where we started from, value addition.
Well, they're actually packaging the finished products to export. It's not just in the raw material.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. That process is opening up our eyes to the potential in, that product that we take for granted.
Absolutely.
Hibiscus flower.
That is sweet. Just add small honey like this. Try. Anyway, we're saying.
You get one after the program. Let's take a look at Nigerian News Direct this morning, which chooses to go the way of politics. And this is the big story. Internal crisis. Adamu meets with party chairman to quell rifts. Unite party. And there are just two riders here. State chairman throw weight behind NWC. Tinubu yet to draft ministerial nominee list. Still consulting. Well, we'll hope that will not be one, factor that could, disintegrate the party or divide the party, so to speak, because there's so many interests involved in that process in itself. But take a look at this one above the nameplate. Security operatives intercept 800,000-litre capacity vessel with stolen crude. That's according to the NNPC, was disclosed yesterday. And that's not all. It's going to be destroyed. So why destroy evidence? This also occurred sometime last year when a vessel laden with crude was intercepted. And, the former chief of army defense staff, disclosed that it was destroyed. So why destroy evidence? And I recall the senior advocate of Nigeria on this platform, frowned at that process, saying it's against the laws.
Well, that same CDS that you cited also said that's the SOP for the military to take on these
standard
things.
operating procedure,
yeah,
you mean? So many things, that one can raise the eyebrow about this process. When you hear security operatives, what the NNPCL is really saying is private security contractors, not the Nigerian Navy. So where's the job for our own security operatives? Let's leave it there for Nigerian News Direct.
Well, we should just close this segment now, but there's a very concerning story on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper that talked about tears, sorrow in Abuja as FCTA demolishes over 100 buildings. We'll bring you more on that subsequently, but for now, let's take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back. Yes, Mr. Mondo Bani, former chairman of NBA Spidel, joins us next to help us make sense of some of what we hear and read from the courts and see what this means, such that we can internalize and get the right meanings to relate to them properly. So it turns out that it's a case concerning elections. Good morning, Mr. Bani. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you. Good morning to you, my brother.
Yeah, so let me just go over this again. I mean, many might have seen it yesterday, but Justice Donatus Okorowo of the Federal High Court, Abuja, did order the Attorney General of the Federation and the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to halt the prosecution of the suspended Adamawa Resident Electoral Commissioner, Hudu Yunusa-Ari, for declaring Senator Aishatu Dahiru Benani as winner of the Adamawa governorship election on the 15th of April. Now, he gave this order following an ex parte application brought by the council to Aisha Benani, Mike Ondoaka. Now, the court held that since the matter is before a tribunal and the parties have submitted to the law, the parties should maintain a status quo on the matter pending the conclusion of the suit. Now, at the mention of that suit, counsel to the applicant brought before the court 2 applications, a motion seeking to interpret Section 144 of the Electoral Act 2022 and an order seeking to maintain status quo in the matter pending the determination of the suit. So they also went ahead and cited Section 149 of the Electoral Act 2022 on the same subject matter. If I could just go ahead and read that to you so you could help us break it down. It says, notwithstanding any other provisions of this act, any defect or error arising from any actions taken by an official of the Commission in relation to any notice, form, or document made or given or other things done by the official in pursuance of the provisions of the Constitution or of this act, or any rules made thereunder remain valid unless otherwise challenged and declared invalid by a competent court of law or tribunal. Mr. Bani, what does this mean?
Yes, let's try to piece this together. Remember that sometime in April, there was election in Adama, I think supplementary election, in which Hudu took over the proceedings. And then while the collection was still ongoing, he declared the APC gubernatorial candidate as the winner. And that was surprising to many persons, including INEC, that is his employer. So what they did was to actually suspend him and then called in the police to investigate what they considered an infraction against the electoral law, and then also send his suspension to the president for approval, which the president gladly approved. And so the investigation continued, and then the election itself was completed, and INEC announced a winner. And there is a governor now in Adamawa. And so while this was going on, the issue of investigation was an issue. At the time he went to court, he wanted the police to stop the investigation. I think that did not hold sway. So eventually, recently we were told that that investigation has been completed and the 6-count charge has been filed in Adamawa State High Court. That is what is going on now. Before yesterday, we heard about the expat order that was granted to maintain the status quo ante, so everyone became very surprised. Members of the public, again, were thrown into confusion. What is going on? Can a court actually stop the trial of a criminal? A criminal case, that the police itself has completed, and the INEC is the one heading that trial. So that is what we're here to analyze and look at whether it was right for any trial to be halted. Pending the determination of the substantive suit that before the tribunal. Are they the same? This is a criminal case, and the other one is a civil matter. What is actually before the tribunal was the issue of his announcing the result while the collation was going on, part of the grounds of petition before the election tribunal. So what has this criminal trial got to do with the substantive suit that is presently pending before the election tribunal? But the good news is that the court adjourned this case to 18th of July, asking the respondents to come before the court and tell the court why the relief that have been sought by Madam Binani will not be upheld. And so the INEC has opportunity now to respond to this ex parte order that has been granted, maybe asking that it be set aside because an institution that is empowered by law to carry out investigation has completed, and the next thing is to have the accused person charged to court, and court cannot stop the trial of a criminal process, that is done in accordance with the law. That is what I expect to happen on 18th. But whatever it is, we are totally confused. This penchant to rush to court, whenever investigation is being called upon by any security agencies, these political people rush to court and ask the court to stop the investigation. Now we are beyond the issue of investigation. We are going now to trial. And then the court is also halting the trial of a criminal case. So it's becoming very confusing to the members of the public. What is actually going on? Are we using the judicial powers effectively and in accordance with the law? Are we abusing it and all that? So these are some of the things that will crop up in the days ahead.
Well, in terms of administration of justice and the perception of the judiciary in this kind of matters, because even today, I think, who was it that was suggesting that certain judges should not be sitting over election petition tribunals because they just want to ensure that the judiciary is really and truly the real meaning of the word independent of whatever else goes on, court of public opinion or wherever, just face the law, plain and simple. So we thought that these kind of matters have been discussed and addressed by the CJNs before now and now, such that judges conduct themselves in ways that are very clear, in clear terms, and not unambiguous, such that it gives a wrong meaning to the members of the public who may begin to raise questions. But this particular one now, does it appear as though all of those calls may have been falling on deaf ears?
Yeah, we just finished a conference. I'm talking about SPIDL recently in Lagos, and part of the discussion is this issue of judicial intervention in electoral matters. And the conclusion, by all speakers, that were invited is that, look, we're really overburdening the judiciary with this issue of electoral matters. If you go to courts, almost all the courts in the country today, all the criminal cases and the civil cases are on permanent adjournment, pending the time that these judges will come back from the election tribunal petition, where most of them have been assigned to go and do that responsibility. And all those cases are halted. The criminal cases are not going on, the civil cases are not going, even those on fundamental human rights, ordinarily that should receive priority, at least, it's not being given that due attention. People are languishing in jail because of the issue of election petition that is presently going on. And the issue is, why are we really, suffering, litigant? Why are we suffering the judiciary? Why are we even overburdening the judges with electoral matters? Is there no way we can even ensure that our electoral process, come to the level of fairness, that people do not in any way go to court, to challenge most of these elections, the election outcome. So it is an issue. Then the issue of ex parte, we have also, it's been discussed within the SPIDL cycle, and retired justices and serving justices and even learned seniors, lawyers, were invited to talk about this issue of abuse of ex parte, that it's only on very rare occasion, very rare, issue that has to do with maybe dissemination of that subject matter or destruction of that subject matter that will actually make the court to interfere with this ex parte order. Because the most important thing is that the other party should be put on notice. If you have come to say, oh, INEC should not in any way prosecute, why is INEC not put on notice in this matter? Why must it be granted ex parte? But as I said earlier, the matter is adjourned to 18, and INEC will have the opportunity to tell the court why that ex parte order should actually be set aside. So the issue of abuse of ex parte is an issue in administration of justice. The issue also of burdening the judiciary with all electoral matters. All electoral matters, while other cases now are pending before the various courts in the country, is something we have to look at. Why are we doing this to ourselves? Why is the judiciary being used only to serve the interests of politicians, whereas ordinary citizens whose cases are pending before the court are now suffering? But the judiciary is not being used to ensure that the political class, is being serviced, to the detriment of the majority of Nigerians. So these are issues we really have to keep on, raising, within important channels like yours, so let Nigerians begin to decide whether we are doing, right to the country or we are doing the wrong thing to the country. So it's part of the discussion in administration of justice. Thank you, my brother.
There's so many questions, swirling through my head, but I mean, especially as you talk about this issue of electoral cases seeming to supersede almost every other case that is in court. As some people would say, but we've been down this route before. We've been in a situation whereby electoral matters used to take 3 years, thereabout for them to be resolved. And that did not augur well for the people whose tenures were time-bound. And, sometimes somebody who was not supposed to be there would have spent almost all of the time that the rightful person should be there. We're still reaping the consequences till today. So the question will be, what will be the halfway ground, in making sure that other cases do not suffer at the same time, these matters which are always time-bound should be heard, expeditiously. But let me ask you about this particular matter, and I know that you won't want to delve into the merit or demerit of the case now, but looking at it, they have also said that, look, if the judge should find that the application that they have made is frivolous. At the end of the day, they're willing to pay whatever it is that the courts deem fit. That's part of what it is that we're seeing here. But I'm wondering, this matter which they have brought before the court, seeking an expertise for, is supposed to be something that has an effect on the election petition matter, which Ms. Binani has taken before the election petition court, which is where her matter, should have been determined. Don't forget that she had initially brought her matter before the Federal High Court here in Abuja, and the judge had asked her or her lawyers, to explain to him if he had jurisdiction over the matter, and I think it was determined that he didn't, and whatever it was that she was seeking should, rightfully go to an election petition court. Do you really see the two really being intertwined, that if INEC was taking action against Mr. Ari, then, it was going to affect whatever case that Ms. Binani was presenting in court?
I don't think the two cases are related. I don't think the two cases are actually related. The grounds for petition before the election tribunal are specified by the Electoral Act. You go to court on ground whether the candidate is qualified. And second issue is whether there is the election process itself is very corrupt. There are some malfeasance or malpractice committed in the electoral process. And finally, if the candidate did not in any way garner the valid vote, that should entitle him to be declared the winner. These are the three grounds under which you go to election tribunal. Now, what Hudu is facing is the issue of electoral malfeasance, electoral offense. They are saying, look, were you actually the returning officer? He was a reg, quite all right, of Adamawa. But was he the one that was appointed as the returning officer for that election that took place? Was he the returning officer? I don't think he was. Going by facts, that was revealed, he was not the returning officer. Then secondly, why the collation was going on? Why the collation of that result, that particular election was going on? This man went ahead before the entire members of the public to announce the result when the process has not been completed. And that was why INEC, the employer, had to intervene and say, look, this is absolutely wrong. Yeah, we have a right to review these things, when you do it, but we have not done it right. And for not doing that right, we are suspending you. We are not only suspending you, we are also handing you over to the security agencies to ensure that they commence investigation as to your culpability. Now, the police have actually completed that investigation and found out that he was culpable, that he committed an electoral malfeasance, and for which he should be tried. And so what is going on in the election tribunal is purely on an issue of challenging the outcome. It has nothing to do with crime that allegedly has been committed, for which I don't think that the court has any right to stop somebody, an agency, from prosecuting an offender. So that is to me, two issues, that are clearly at variance, that shouldn't in any way be, muddled up, But this man is modeling, the lawyer is modeling, saying, oh, we cannot in any way try this man until the final outcome of the election petition tribunal. Whereas from my own analysis, from my own understanding, these are two separate cases. That one is criminal, this one is civil. And if somebody has been found culpable and all that, so will any court stop trial of a suspected criminal? Can a court, in the recent of it, stop somebody from being prosecuted? I don't think so. And I don't think that our court should now probably descend to this level of doing some of the things they do. But as I said earlier, he has adjourned the matter to 18. Let's also see whether, one, do the court even have jurisdiction in this? That has not been challenged. These are some of the issues that will come up. Does the court at this point have even jurisdiction of the matter that is pending before the election tribunal? When election itself has been announced, the result has been announced and all that. So these are some of the issues that will crop up, on 18 when this matter comes up, because I think that INEC would not be sleeping. The Attorney General that also has been joined as a party also, the office of the PAMSEC will not be sleeping. They have to file certain things in order to actually bring to the notice of the court that this is clearly something that is outside the jurisdiction of the court. So I think something will come up on the 18th concerning this matter.
In the meantime, is INEC bound to obey this particular court order? Do they have to stop the prosecution whilst they wait till the 18th of July?
You know, when you say maintain status quo, you know, sometimes it gives lawyers rooms, you know, for interpretation. Sometimes varied interpretation. What is the status quo? The charges have already been filed in court. Just pending final, proper or formal arraignment before this particular order was made. Maybe I will advise INEC to share their sword and allow a team to come when they can now properly approach the court and tell the court the truth of what the matter is all about, and then see what the court will say. I would rather ask that the order of the court, whether wrongly or rightly, be obeyed, pending the time that they will bring before the judge some of the facts, you know, concerning this case, why the order itself should be set aside. And so that is the way for us to go. We cannot in any way advocate that any judgment of the court, the order of the court, should be disobeyed at any point, whether rightly given or wrongly given. We must obey. The only thing we can do is to probably go on appeal or have it set aside. That is the proper thing to advise.
Mr. Bani, questions for you, Bukola and Ayo.
Thank you, Mawkwe. Mr. Bani, let me reiterate Mawkwe's question in the light of the issue that you raised the other time, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you said a court cannot stop a criminal trial. Is that what you said? Let me just confirm that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any competent court of the land that can stop the trial of an accused person if an investigation has been properly done by an agency that is actually allowed by law to do that, and that has been completed, and you want to arraign an individual formally, and they probably somebody rushed to court and they, oh no, I should not, because we come to a stage where armed robbers, you know, armed robbery suspects and other, you know, criminals can take undue advantage of such a procedure and begin to stop their trial and say, look, I have filed a case against a so person, and for that reason, I'm not going to be charged. And before you know it, the matter goes up to Supreme Court, and they will forget even the main issue that, you know, should have actually been taken up by the court, and we're now pursuing the ancillary issue and all that. So I don't think it's a proper procedure for us to be entertaining, you know, judicial intervention in matters that are purely within the responsibility of a security agency. Even this issue of stopping investigation, I have seen a situation. It has happened with a former governor, you know, in Nigeria, where perpetual injunction was granted, restraining the investigation of an alleged crime. Recently, also, somebody who happens to be a former governor also rushed to court while he was being invited by the security agencies. So I am beginning to, and people are beginning to question the rationale of people rushing to court to stop, you know, an agency from carrying out a responsibility that has been assigned by the law.
Okay, Dr. Bani.
I advocate for rights, but we must also balance these things.
Yeah, but if that is the position of the law as you are putting it to us now, and you also say that there are two cases at play now. There's a criminal case, there's a civil case. Both of them originate from the same law. Both of them originate from the same process. How are they different? If they are both going to be using the same laws, the Electoral Act and the Constitution, for the prosecution and defense or whatever.
You know, how these things are sorted out, you know, is when all parties are joined, when all parties come before the court, and all the facts are made available. You find out that the court will always find a way to resolve these issues. What has happened now is that this order was made ex parte. Remember, ex parte means that that party was not put on notice. That order that was made yesterday was done ex parte. And so the court now has adjourned for the other party to come and show cause why the substantive relief, you know, will not be granted. So it means that they have the opportunity now to present to the court, you know, their own side of the story. So the court will look at all the facts. The man who has, the woman who has gone to court saying, oh, don't try this person because it will affect the outcome of my election tribunal case. And the person who says, oh, I have a right under the law to charge somebody for a criminal act, you know, because it has nothing to do with the election petition matter that is going on. So the court now will now evaluate all the facts and then probably reach a conclusion. So there is a way these matters will be sorted out at the end of the day. They're applying the law quite all right. But the point is that the court always has a way of hearing every party in this and then probably reaching a decision that we meet the meat of the matter.
Well, Dr. Bani, following up on Ayo's concerns as well, recall that the candidate had withdrawn the suit, you know, sometime in April, saying that a lot of issues had come up. And this would seem a seeming U-turn, now filing another suit barring over the declaration of her emergence as winner as illegal. So will the establishment of culpability, which is what seems to be happening with the commencement of prosecution of the airing INEC of REC, will it also mean a guilty, some form of guilt upon the candidate of the APC, which is why she has made a U-turn on this suit?
Well, the issue of election petition, as I said earlier, has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. It has to do with proving the fact that you have a grouse where you have gone to court to challenge the person whose election was, outcome has been declared by INEC, and that he is the winner. So you are challenging whether the man is not eligible or that the election itself was marred by some malpractices or some level of corruption that made it, not tenable for the man to have been declared the winner, or that he did not garner the valid vote that should have actually entitled him to be declared the winner. These are the grounds that the woman has gone to court to challenge the man who is now the governor. It has nothing to do with this one that is going on that, this is what the police have actually found out. From what transpired when he was presiding over the electoral process in Adamawa. One, was he the person that was supposed to preside over that process? I don't think so. Secondly, what was even the manner with which he presided over the process? Did he have to announce somebody when the election itself has not been completed? Was it not an electoral infraction that is criminal in nature, which is what the police now have done their own investigation, concluded, and then have passed over to INEC to now ensure that this, their worker, who has not done the right thing in the process, should be prosecuted. So it's a different ballgame entirely. It has nothing to do with the outcome of the election tribunal. It has nothing to do, because the ground upon which you challenge the winner is different. Now, this is criminal act that has been done by somebody who presided over that process. So I don't see the similarity. Only if you ask me, my own opinion is that the criminal case can still go on while the election tribunal case is going on. But whatever it is, the judge is capable. I'm very, very sure when all these facts are brought before him on 18th, he will look at the entire thing and probably, reach a decision that will settle everyone's heart. For now, people are really not.
Even though you have established that a civil proceeding shouldn't impact on a criminal proceeding, yet again we have seen this ruling by the High Court. Doesn't it place a huge moral burden, a moral question on the electoral process, and a wrong precedent, for future cases emanating from the electoral process?
What precedent are you saying now? What precedent has been established that you found that we should look at? What precedent? Can you be a bit clearer with that question, please?
Hello, Mr. Albani.
Did you hear me? I said, what precedent are you referring to that has been established that you found?
Yes, exactly. This precedent where the court has stopped the prosecution, suspended the prosecution of the erring electoral officer.
Oh, okay. As I said earlier, this order was made ex parte, remember? And the court has adjourned this matter to 18th of July, asking that the other parties should come to court and tell the court why the court should not in any way grant whatever the substantive relief is. So meaning that the other party will be given an opportunity to challenge that order that has been granted ex parte. It's an order granted ex parte. The other party was not put on notice. INEC was not put on notice. The Attorney General was not put on notice. Now that this order has been made, they will be able to file certain things before the court in order to tell the court, one, does the court even have jurisdiction at this point in time over this matter that is pending before the tribunal? Secondly, this is a criminal case, that has been investigated by an agency that is authorized by the law, which has been completed and charges filed. Would any court want to stop the process of trying somebody who is alleged to have committed a crime under our law, under our jurisprudence? These are the issues that the court will establish on 18th. So I don't think that any precedent has been established yet. Until this matter probably gets to the Supreme Court, then you can answer if precedent has been established. But rushing to call people to protect their rights, I believe in protecting rights. But the court also must be wary it not being used unduly in order to probably grant some right that does not exist. The right against trial does not exist.
But Dr. Albani,
the right against prosecution does not exist. The right against being investigated by security agents does not exist.
Dr. Albani, can you hear me?
Fundamental human law. Yeah,
now, if you say there is no we cannot call this a precedent yet, is there a precedent for this one? in previous, cases or laws or whatever it is? Is there a precedent in law that such a thing has happened before, or that is being cited in any way, manner, shape, or form?
You're putting me in the witness box. Yes, there's been one. Okay. There's been one where somebody was actually where EFCC was restrained from investigating him. I think it was done in perpetuity. I don't know what happened. That EFCC did not appeal against that case. I don't know whether it is even late now for them, because it has taken several years for that appeal to come. And it remained like that. There was no trial. There was no investigation up to now. So that has been cited as a precedent. Recently, as I said earlier, one governor also rushed to court to stop the security agency from inviting him. But I think that eventually DSS had to invite him, and he went there and then has been released on bail. So I'm saying there has been precedent, but that precedent that I have is not with issue of trial. It is only issue of investigation. But we're now entering into the realm of trial, where you now say, oh, don't arraign this person until so thing is determined. I say it may be a dangerous precedent if we allow it to stand, because nothing stops an armed robber from also going to court and say, look, I should not be prosecuted because I have filed an action against the Attorney General over a matter that may not be related to the armed robbery incident. So I think it's not a precedent that should be allowed to stand. That's why I think will be a very defining moment, whether the court will allow such a precedent to stand, or whether it's going to set it aside. So we're all hoping to see, the reaction of the court concerning this particular precedent we have just mentioned.
Well, Mr. Obani, the reason I raised the concern about precedent is that, during the general elections, ahead of the governorship elections, INEC had recommended, the sacking of some erring officials, and in fact barred them from taking part in the governorship elections of March. So if there was no candidate raising concerns over their own misconduct, and their own prosecution went ahead to smooth sail, it would seem unfair on their part where, that of an erring official which gained national prominence has been sort of suspended in this way.
Yes, that's why, as I said earlier, this should not be allowed to stand. Your concern is well noted. That, why was others, where were others prosecuted and nothing happened, and why is this one special? And some people have also raised the issue that, look, this hoodoo of a thing, that was so bold enough to do what he did. He had some people, that were actually behind it. But I don't want to believe that there are authorities that are backing him in what he's doing. He had gone to court to stop police investigation. That did not work. Now he's stopping his prosecution. I don't know how far he can go with this. But whatever it is, my joy in the land always is that our judiciary will always resolve this issue, no matter how naughty it is, no matter how complicated it is. At the end of the day, if they fail to resolve it at the lower court, you see that the Supreme Court at the end will clear the entire mess and make it look neater. And that is actually my hope in everything that. Yes.
Dr. Obani, that's not to say that, even the entire judiciary hasn't been questioned in terms of some of its decisions. You have also, yes. But one way or the other, saying that the decision that we're looking at now is something that, shouldn't be allowed to stand. It also raises the issue, part of the issues that were raised when Chief Afe Babalala SAN became marked 60 years at the bar. Not 60 years old, but 60 years at the bar. I'm still basking in that fact. So those issues were raised. One of the issues that was raised was the fact of corruption, having been so entrenched in the previous administration. There are those who will cite the responsibility of the judiciary in that, and that even the judiciary has become vulnerable one way or the other from the conversations, at that event of yesterday. What is your take on the vulnerability of the judiciary, especially coming from the celebration of yesterday and the conversations that were had?
The judiciary will be as vulnerable as we want it to be. If we want a strong judiciary that is clearly independent, then you have to probably look at the state of your laws and then look at some of the things you have made available to the judiciary in order for them to function effectively and independently. It's very key. In SPIDEL, we have always, almost every year during our conferences, our attention has been, geared towards the judiciary, because if we get it right at that level in this country, and I keep on saying it, and I've said it, on your channel severally, that look, if we get a judicial system that is very strong, that is independent, that does not look at any person's pockets or look at any person's face or status or where you come from, then half of our problem, or 40% of our problem in the country would have been sorted out. If any person knows that if he does anything wrong,
the question is how. If he does anything wrong. My apologies. The question then is how. It's something that you've talked about several times. So many lawyers such as yourself have talked about it, to the effect that I think it's Chief Yunusa-Ari who also said, who is a former NBA president, saying that some decisions of the courts, as far as he's concerned, shouldn't ever have happened. You have also said something similar this morning. So if we still have situations like this where, strong pillars of judiciary in our country, such as yourself and a good number of people who are, some of them former presidents of the NBA, raising questions about the processes, the question then is, how do we get the kind of judiciary that we want, that, as you said, would be insulated from the vulnerabilities of the state?
No, my joy, if you remember, I'm going somewhere before the interruption, at the end, because of the appellate option, because of the appellate, court we have, most of the things we have at the lower court, which we consider to be wrong, are usually corrected. Most times, you get up to the Supreme Court level, you see that these things are, streamlined and, well pronounced in such a manner that you will be happy. It's not as if to say that almost all the decisions of the Supreme Court are not without any fault, because they are us to human. But most of these wrongs we complain about are the lowest court. Most times are being corrected at the appellate, courts, especially the Supreme Court, anytime there is an issue. But the point I was trying to make is that we must, as a nation, deliberately by policy, make sure that our judiciary is very, very strong. We must try as much as possible to respect the orders of the court. Whoever is in power, whether the president or the governor, whenever a court pronouncement is made, whether wrongly or rightly, we must obey it. The only thing you can do is to appeal.
Doesn't that in itself, Dr. Obani, doesn't that in itself raise questions around what we often say, that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man? If
it remains the last hope. It remains the last hope. But I'm saying that why there are layers of judicial authority is when there is wrong at the lowest court. It can be corrected at the Court of Appeal. If it's not corrected at the Court of Appeal, it's certainly at the Supreme Court level. Okay. So those layers are inbuilt mechanism that is actually meant to correct these errors in case any, because they are still human beings.
Which also raises another question, Dr. Obani. Yes. Justice delayed, they say, is justice denied, right? If that notion is still, that dictum is still very, very true, how then do we resolve the issues around electoral cases taking so much precedence that civil cases are left in the back burner, consequently delaying justice?
The conclusion we reached at the last conference of speed that I held in Lagos is that we must, as much as possible, try to enthrone fairness in our electoral process. Whatever we can do to determine the fairness of the process that the polling unit, we must do it as a nation, either using digitization or using technology in order to enthrone fairness so that there will be less human interference in our electoral process. The moment we do that, the less burdensomeness, on our judicial system, because we are overburdening the judiciary. Almost look at the pre-election cases, most of them are still pending. And then the post-election cases now, they will not end until probably sometime in December or January. We are overburdening our judicial system. Why are we doing this? Because we have problem with the electoral process. The electoral process does not in any way ensure fairness. There is always problem at that level. At the polling unit, we don't have fairness at that level. Can't we do something that will really ensure fairness of the electoral process? At the polling unit, that is where leadership is decided, not at the court. We are overburdening the court. We are giving responsibility that the court shouldn't have. By determining the majority that should determine the leadership of any position. But now the judiciary is one doing it. So substituting the majority with that of minority. So what we can do is to make sure that we really, really ensure technology-driven electoral process that we reduce some of the infractions we complain about that make people to go to court.
Mr. Obani,
Yes.
Particularly, one more from me now, particularly because of those, obvious weaknesses in the system, can we rule out the possibility that, this suspension of the prosecution of the erring electoral officer can be done in perpetuity if it's going to impact on, the case of the candidate of the All Progressives Congress? Can we rule that out?
Well, I won't want to probably, play the role of the judge now. The judge is going to determine this issue on 18th. Let him look at all the facts of the case, right from the respondent and that of the person who has actually gone to court and say, look, let's place this on balance, on balance of probability. Will this particular decision, or the trial process actually impinge on the election tribunal case that is going on? If the court finds, let him go ahead, but that will not be the end. Some person can go to Court of Appeal and up to Supreme Court concerning this. But whatever it is, we are of the opinion that there is no way you can stop criminal trial because of a pending civil case. I don't think that both of them are similar. It is a dangerous precedent if we allow it to stand. Yeah. That's my own opinion.
Very, very interesting. You say there is no way it can stand, yet we have to obey the order of the court. Such a conundrum. Dr. Monday Ubani, former chairman of SPIDL, thank you so much for being a part of our program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. We're back right after now. Do stay with us.
I think restructuring should be looked at from the point of view of various components. And if you look at what is currently happening, even before the advent of the Tinubu administration, some form of tinkering have started. One of the biggest problems facing us as a country is security. And part of the components of restructuring is how to decentralize the policing system. And I think part of what restoring should be all about is that derivation areas should get more. And if they do get more, everybody thought that everything is going to Niger Delta. But okay, now, if Zamfara people get something from gold, the Bauchi bauxite, the just people from tin, my people from gold, and so on and so forth, everybody will feel that, yes, we're having a fair share. Between you and I, all this talk about restructuring is also about economic development. When you get into public office, you have to tidy a lot of things up because there are so many things that goes into it. Oh, you must not operate foreign accounts. You must not. So I just said, okay, what are the things that I need to tidy up now that I'm here again? And this issue of double payment came. I said, okay, look, let us just remind the governor that from this date, I have now been signed it, and I hope that from that date, I'll be receiving my emoluments as a senator of the Federal Republic. So kindly step down the one that you are doing for me. Probably after Senate, I will decide, depending on what the law says, whether there will be severance, pension for senators or pension for governor, and then probably say, okay, which one do I want to, or which one does it not permit you? So it's just so simple. But I was really shocked to see that it has generated so much interest.
Welcome back. Senator Gbenga Daniel joins us this morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming on the program today. And good to see you again, Senator.
Good morning, Chamberlain. It's been a while. Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Hearing you talk about you being surprised that it's generating this kind of reaction, you're asking that, look, these emoluments, these pensions, it's not been coming anyway, so what's the point? So what did that then tell you when you saw the kind of reaction people gave to it?
Well, it indicates really that things that appear to be normal is becoming unusual in our country. I remember, like I said, that I think there was indeed a court judgment which Serap got, basically saying that people should not be entitled to double payments, especially if you now have another kind of public service. But even before then, naturally, a human being should not be entitled to double remuneration. So for me, like I said earlier on, it's just about, you know, what do I need to do? For about 12 years, I was not in public service. Now that I'm back in public service, let me just make sure that I tidy things up. And somebody pointed out to me, and I said, okay, why not just inform or remind the governor that I'm now here, I should please stop the monthly pension that he was paying. And hopefully when I'm out of the Senate, we check what the law says. If ex-senators have emoluments, then maybe that's the one I'll continue, or then revert to the one that the government was doing as a former governor. So it's as simple as that. But looking at what it has generated, it clearly goes to show that people are not happy with public, you know, figures any longer. People are skeptical that they will not do the right thing. And I think it's time we start to lay good examples. If we want a better society where value system is the order of the day, we must make sure that even in little things, we set good examples so that others can fall in line. This is just what it's all about.
And you did also expect or say that some of your colleagues should follow toward the same path. Have you got any reaction or indication from any one of them who may say, wait a minute?
I know that for you to be a governor and successfully run a state, people keep forgetting that these are probably one of the best people that you can find in such locations. And I have no doubt in my mind that everybody will now check. And I know many people, if they've not already done it, will fall in line.
Well, what has been the reaction? I mean, have you received calls from your colleagues? Just wondering. I mean, colleagues who are perhaps also in the same boat as you, who are also successfully elected senators and who are former governors. Have you received any reaction?
Nothing recent, but don't forget when this issue was raised some time ago, I remember a few of my colleagues or former colleagues came out to say that they have not been receiving such emoluments. If my memory serves me right, I think Bukola Saraki, I also think Governor Fayemi at that time, and one or two people made such. So for me, it's just, you know, doing the right thing. That's all. I've not received any call from any of my colleagues, but I've received a lot of positive comments from all and sundry, locally, abroad, everywhere. And I was really just wondering, you know, what that simple thing had done, you know, to the polity.
But in terms of the amount, Senator,
yeah,
I'm just wondering, is it really 600 and something thousand?
Yes, that's what it is.
Interestingly, The Guardian has a whole editorial on it, so perhaps it might help you understand why there's a furore on the matter. I mean, case against pension payment to former governors. For a number of people, they say, oh, if it was just the pension or an allowance, that, you know, that would be fine. But what you find is that a lot of former or state governments have made laws that make sure that, you know, their former governors are well taken care of. And you wonder, you know, considering the fact that governance is a continuum and you'll continue to have governors, they wonder if states that always say that they never have money, can they really afford, you know, to take on this amount of responsibility? Some include houses and maybe in their state capital and in Abuja, you know, retinue of domestic staff, security aides, change of cars on a yearly or every 2 years or 4 yearly basis, stipulating the actual amount that those cars must cost. etc., medical services anywhere around the world. I see here in your statement, though, that you say it's pertinent to have it on record that since I left office in 2011, I have not benefited from any welfare packages, be it medical, furniture, transportation. So it does mean that that is included in the Ogun State law. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of any law that was made at any point in time in Ogun State over this matter. But let me also quickly say that I'm not averse to state looking after their former governors. As a matter of fact, a governor is supposed to be more or less, whether former, is an embodiment of the state. And I'm not unaware also that after service, quite a number of governors have not done well economically. And when you, contrary to what is out there, it is indeed service for people who want to serve. And when you now serve for a good number of years and you come out and then all of a sudden you don't have a good car to ride, it's not really the best. I'm just saying that in the case of our Ogun State in particular, in fact, I said that Ogun State former governors need to be commended. Right from the time of Governor Shoba, he was in total control of the House of Assembly, and he was in a position to say, okay, you guys go and look at it. He didn't do it. And I also virtually controlled the House of Assembly when I was governor. I didn't think there was a need to do it. And of course, my successor, to a large extent, also was in control of the Assembly, and he didn't do it. So maybe there is something that needs to be commended about the people who have had to run the government in Ogun State over the years. We didn't just think it was right to do it, and we didn't do it. But that is not to say that I'm averse to the state looking after their former governors. In fact, it's the right thing to do. The quantum is a different story. And I have just said that in the case of, in my own case and in the case of Ogun State, I had to say that because everywhere you go, is out there that, oh, you former governors, you're wrecking the state, you're getting so much money and all of that. I said, look, in my own particular case, the case of Ogun State that I know, that's about it. If anything then happens outside that, which is statutory, it's at the discretion of whoever the governor is. But statutorily, to the best of my knowledge, that's what it is.
Okay, so this pension and allowance is something that is in another law, or how do you then... I
don't know how it came from, to be honest with you. It could be since the days of the military. I don't know how it came about.
Okay.
But I think that it has really to do with the
RMAFC.
Yes, because that amount was the same amount that we're getting in service. So I think it's just that, okay, whatever you are getting in service, you continue. That's what it's all about.
I think this is for former Governor Shoba. I think he got the same that he was earning. So if it's a little lower, whatever it is at that time, that's what they all get, according to the law.
I believe so.
But would you encourage, when you get back to the House, haven't seen the kind of, to the Senate, haven't seen the kind of response this is generating, people talking about cutting costs to ensure that we stay above board or give good examples or lead by examples. Is this something you may bring up on the floor of the Senate in terms of the Senate doing something about public officials or themselves to send a message to Nigerians that, look, we want to lead by example on any matter whatsoever?
Well, that's a function of the perception of the people of how humongous, the so-called allowances are. I must confess that while outside, I also felt that, because when I compared the patronage some were getting as governors and then as former governors by way of pension, and you hear some figures, you think that, look, it's indeed important that these things are trimmed down. But I must also warn that a lot of things have changed in the last few years. Ordinarily, a lawmaker is supposed to go to the House or to the Senate chambers to look at laws, make motions, bring out bills, and so on and so forth. But regrettably, the expectation out there is now totally different. In fact, I'm not so sure that any lawmaker will be applauded for making one law or the other when you go back to your constituency. The level of poverty is such that they just say, look, the governor is doing his job. You too, as a senator, what are you bringing home? Where are the roads that you are tiring? What have you facilitated? So, and when you are not able to do that, you better be sure that from your allowances you are doing a lot of things. You know, for instance, I am going to, in the next 1 week, launch a microcredit, you know, for all the states, all the local governments in my constituency. That's going to cost me a couple of millions. And that's not from the government. You know, I have to find a way, either from my little resources or from whatever allowances I get, to do some of those things. If I don't do it, then I won't be perceived to be a successful senator. So a lot of things have changed. And I think going forward, what I think may happen is to also look at possibilities of looking at the laws again and ensuring that these constituency projects, you know, a lot more, you know, is given to lawmakers. Because that is the only thing that the people at home want to hear. All the other things, they are not interested.
Mm. Even though at that point, that argument about constituency project, I'm sure, who knows, when that comes up, there will be a lot more perspective about it, because the management of it at the time was a huge bone of contention, where people thought, wait a minute, because, of course, you'll always have persons who may not use it for the essence of which you're mentioning, for instance. So the question of abuse, should that also be addressed?
Of course, between you and I do honestly feel that there are more than enough laws to take care of these abuses. There are various agencies that their business is to look at some of these things, and we just need to get them to do what they have to do. Yes, I've heard stories of people taking money for concerned projects and the job is really not done. Oh, that's corruption. That's already an offense in the status books. And there is this thing called whistleblower. Let people blow whistle. I think we should do a lot more openly as we evolve, you know, in this democratic experiment. So I don't really think that the management that you're talking about is such a big issue. I'm, however, also of a view that when you look at the macroeconomics of what is going on, the biggest challenge we have in our country, quite honestly for me, is capital flight.
How is that?
Which means that if resources are left deliberately within the space called Nigeria, whether you like it or not, that money will continue to circulate in Nigeria, and it has great multiplier effect on the economy. I don't know whether I'm correct. This is another big issue. Mm-hmm. This is another big issue. And I learned a lot of this from the Jewish model. So that if you look at them, you can say that they're tribalistic, whatever you want to call them, but you go to the Jewish community and they make sure that their resources go around within that community. If we can also try in our country and as much as possible keep resources within, and I'm talking in terms of virtually everything.
But largely politicians who take our money out of the country, largely?
Not necessarily. Even from the point of view of a lot of big contracts that are awarded, where there are competencies in-house, yes, where there are, you know, local competencies. And I've heard stories that, they don't do a good job. No, I don't accept it. There must be a period in which people will make mistakes and learn from that mistakes. And we cannot say we will not do that because we want to jump. It doesn't work that way. That's my own opinion. Maybe because as an engineer, I've seen this happen in so many instances. We must, as much as possible, try to keep our resources within. So whether you're talking of constituency projects, whatever it is, keep the resources there. If it's mismanaged, let the agencies that look after such things do what they have to do.
Well, I know I still remember Ogroma and the fact that, well, you're a governor, you know, you try to make sure that the agency statutorily responsible for that in the state handled as much of the jobs as much as possible. But, you know, I'm sure you also would have recorded mixed results, you know, with that experiment. Because some people said, oh, maybe that was an experiment, you know. Some people were saying maybe what the states, those kinds of agencies would be good at doing would be patching up roads. I do not know. Maybe if it had continued, perhaps they might have built capacity. One can never tell because it didn't continue. But you just spoke to something. You talked about how poverty has increased, you know, at least since you were governor, the poverty is now palpable. You can see it out there. And that, you know, you will not be considered a successful senator if you do not take something back home as a result of this. And I'm sure that is something, I do not know how, you know, it has informed your coming to the Senate, but as a legislative house, I mean, as a member of the 10th National Assembly, how do you think that senators can actually address this headlong, considering the fact that right now your party, the president who leads your party now, is asking Nigerians to tighten their belts? We've seen the removal of fuel subsidy. We've seen the Naira being floated. It's going to affect so many other areas and businesses. I mean, yes, the Fiscal Act is also being considered, and some changes have been made there. But beyond that, as senators, what do you think that, you know, you can be able to contribute, you know, to ensuring that Nigeria's economy grows as it ought to?
Well, it still comes back to what I said earlier on. It's only Nigerians that will build Nigeria. And I'm quite strong, and I'm happy you referred to the experiments we performed. While we said our people cannot just say they are qualified engineers and all they are doing in the various ministries for 20, 30 years is carrying files around. Let them roll up their sleeves and go and practice what they learned in school. And I must tell you that it was a very successful experiment because capacity were built, and there are quite a number of people who worked at that time that I know are now running good construction businesses, even in their retirements. This thing is not from heaven. We have seen clearly that medical personnel that ordinarily may not be doing well here are going abroad, and in an environment where equipments are provided, and they are doing very, very well. And that is not just that, even in other areas. So my own position, therefore, is that even at the level of the Senate, we must be able to come with some kind of legislation or bills. Some of those things have been there. Maybe we need to look at them again to see how we can operationalize them. Once upon a time in this country, you have contracts graded A, B, C. And the whole idea is that, oh, some of these things that are rural, we have rural people to do it. Some of these things that are not so, for instance, they say, oh, one is trunk A, trunk B, trunk C roads. You know, let's have Nigerians do those maybe B and C roads. And the trunk A road that maybe we still do not have competence, but I don't believe it's competence we don't have, it's equipment we don't have. Yes, other people do that. But as an engineer, I know that there's the difference between trunk B and trunk A road. It's just the layer of asphalt you put on it. If you perceive that bigger trailers, bigger vehicles are going to go on a road, you make it thicker. But if you perceive that this is just internal roads, you don't need to spend so much money, you can do that. So there's nothing that somebody is doing in trunk A road that somebody cannot do with the resources and so on and so forth. That's where we're coming from. And if that happens, you'll find out that over a period of time, people have acquired skills. You know, I've heard so many stories about how Nigerian contractors have not done well. I don't, unfortunately, subscribe to it. I think we should give them the opportunity to do the work. And then the ones that don't do it work, they don't do it well, let us sanction them. Let us withdraw their licenses, you know. And before you know what is happening, the standard will start rising. So what I'm saying, therefore, is that it might get to a state where we go and look at the existing legislation. If we do not keep our resources in-house, we're not going anywhere. And that's why people was saying that The Romans built Rome. The Chinese built China. The Europeans built Europe. We are expecting these people to come and build Nigeria for us. It's not going to happen. And if it's going to happen, it will take probably 1,000 years. And in any case, we don't have such resources. So the way to go is for us to take the bull by the horn and challenge our people. There's no point having thousands of qualified people roaming the streets. There is no work. And there is work on the streets to be done because we are not able to organize them and put them to work. I will wish I have an opportunity once again. What I'm going to do is going to be completely different. I do not believe that there should be anybody who has to work in this country. What? Even if you create community gangs to fix all the various roads in various ways, there is bitumen, there is granite, everything is here in Nigeria, and we're not working.
All right, we'll talk more on these matters. My colleagues, too, will weigh in on this one when we return from Lagos. Do stay on with us.
Discover Lipton's flavorful and balanced taste. We pick fine quality tea leaves from selected tea gardens around the world to give you Lipton Yellow Label's flavorful and balanced taste in every sip.
The Duchess International Hospital opened its doors in October 2021. The mission of the hospital is to reverse medical tourism. We take particular care here at the Duchess to bring together a combination of the brightest and the best locally, as well as Nigerians in the diaspora who are interested in returning to do very good work for the benefit of our patients here in this country.
The good thing is that we have all international expertise here, all international facilities here, international people working here. Everything is coming together in a space which was considered not great in terms of the availability of healthcare.
Axis Bank, of course, has been able to provide us with a robust range of products and services that has enabled us to deliver that standard and quality of healthcare that is integral to our mission as an organization.
Oh, I wish you were here.
I'm always with you.
But it's not the same without you.
MTN 5G's amazing technology will change how we experience life and the internet. Get ready to encounter the incredible. And remember, no be juju, na MTN 5G.
Yes, sir. Everything is available.
For quality iron rods, Swing Spider.
For original binding wire, Swing Spider.
For original nails, Swing Spider.
Swing Spider is the distributor of Dangote cement and we deliver for free.
Thank you very much. The satisfaction of our customers is of utmost importance to us.
Swing Spider, quality and integrity. All the time.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, good morning, Senator Daniel. It's interesting we have to transit from Your Excellency, the Governor, to Senator. Well, you know, permit me to take you back to the conversation we started with, the decision you took to set an example of sorts. There are those who will see your decision to make that announcement public more politically than the propriety of it, given your relationship with Governor Abiodun. I mean, especially in recent time. How would you respond to them?
First thing first, it wasn't a public letter. You know, there was no issue of making the letter public. But of course, you know, in this day and age, nothing happens. The letter will have been delivered at the governor's office. Somebody will have stamped and signed for it. And in this day and age of the internet and all of that, there is virtually no letter that is not out there. So it wasn't meant to be a public letter. So I need to clarify that. Now, and it has nothing to do with a relationship. I've just said it. On the 13th of June, I was sworn in with others. And next day, I was doing my, I was doing my checks. What is left? Is there, do I still have any foreign account? You know, is there something that I need to, now that I'm now a public officer, and somebody pointed out to me that, look, you know, you need to get them to stop your monthly pension now that you'll be collecting salaries from the National Assembly. And so that was the reason for that. And in any case, talking about my relationship with the governor, there is absolutely no issue with my governor. He's my governor. We don't have to agree on everything. We disagree to agree. But the important thing is that he has a job to do, and he's doing it to the best of his knowledge. And as I've been governor since 20 years ago, it's incumbent on us to try as stakeholders to try in our own bit to support him, to also help him not to fall into some of the pitfalls that we fell into. It doesn't go beyond that, and all of this in the overall interest of our people. We'll continue to do that, but there is no fundamental disagreement, I can assure you.
Well, there are those, I mean, first of all, you tweeted after you sent the letter, you made it public yourself by tweeting about it, telling us that, I mean, you've made this announcement and all of that. Well, I'm pretty sure you know why the rift, or maybe just a small tiff, that I might refer to in the build-up to the elections and after the general elections of February and March, where some people are saying it's because you supported or you didn't support that, the quantum of votes and all of that, went the way it was. So that's the premise upon which I was speaking. The reason I actually brought that is to see the significance of politics in governance. Because for some people, drawing the line between politics and governance can be an issue, both for the politicians and their supporters, as well as those who are in the gallery. Can you hear me?
Yes, better now.
Okay. I mean, I said the reason can you hear me now?
Yes, okay, now I can hear you.
So the reason I raised that issue is because there are those who are unable to dichotomize politics from governance. Once there is a political issue within two people, they see it as something that will affect the process of governance between the two of them. For instance, the issue of you asking for your pension and allowances to be suspended for now is more of a governance issue. But there are those who will not be able to look beyond that rift that you had with the governor, saying he could have done this privately, but hey, he wrote a letter and then he tweeted about it just so that it can be clear that, look, I don't want any weapon against me in the future. So help people understand the difference or the relationship, the points of merger between politics and governance, both for the politicians and their supporters and those who are in the gallery observing.
Well, unfortunately, because of the level of, I don't want to say idleness in the polity, based on also the level of poverty, everything appears to, go around governance and government. So you find out that everybody is just looking at what he said, what he didn't say, and even the interpretation that is not there, people will create all sorts of things. Again, some of the people are doing this to be in the good books of whoever they think can do something for them. Regrettably, that is what is out there. But since you keep talking about a rift with the governor, let me make it categorically clear that there is indeed no rift between myself and the governor. There are perception issues. accentuated by, you know, fit columnists who want to position themselves for favor. And it has to do with the last election, where, you know, the first election was overwhelming for the party. And of course, the second election was not as overwhelming. And I've asked people to please look at the dramatics that personae. The first election was about Jagaban. It was about Bola Tinubu, you know, and all of us, everybody in Ogun State felt that, look, for whatever is worth. And of course, that is really what happened. Then the second election was a state election, you know, where I can tell you that in the course of that first election, I campaigned across party lines. I campaigned across party lines. I campaigned in APC. My old colleagues in PDP, I told them that, look, this is a different story. It's about us. And in other parties, the people who went to Labour, I called them together. Some who went to SDP, I called them together. I said, look, everybody must vote, you know, for Bola Tinubu. So there was a unanimity of purpose. But the second election, there are other variables. And of course, if you know the configuration of our policies in Ogun State, you will know what I'm talking about. There was indeed a contest. But we thank God that at the end of the day, the governor won, though marginally. And I think the perception was that, how could the governor have done not so well in his senatorial district? Oh, it can only be because you did not stand up for him. That is what is going on. But that's quite not true. It was simply because there was indeed a contest. There was a contest in the Peru town. There was a contest in the realm of federal constituency, you know, and that's where we should situate it properly. Going forward, I think that what we could do is to try to, as it were, the election is come and gone. Somebody has won, somebody has lost. There is a little bit of a battle going on at the tribunal. In a few weeks, that will be decided, and the state will just move forward. That's where I look at the situation we have there in Ogun State.
Indeed, Senator Daniel, unanimity of purpose is key, particularly to recouping or, you know, harvesting the gains of elections for politicians. I hope that, you know, there will also be unanimity of purpose that will be recouped from your magnanimity. Permit me to go back there. And I'm quoting from a letter written by former Governor Abdulaziz Yari of Zamfara State to his predecessor in November 2019. He says, I wish to humbly draw your attention to the provision of the law on the above subject matter, which is, you know, the provision of his entitlements, a monthly upkeep allowance of 10 million naira only, and pension equivalent to the salary that he was receiving. He said in that letter that he had only been paid for the month of June and July, and we know, as we say, the rest is history. We know what happened, you know, between the two governors, the other now former as well. I wonder if this is the case across board for all former governors. Senator Daniel, is the allowance to the tune of 10 million naira per month besides the pension that you know, former governors are entitled to? And if this is the case, you know, is the RMEFC fully aware of the situation as it is?
I'm not aware, and let me say this. I said that earlier on, that apart from the statutory allowances, if any other thing happens, to the best of my knowledge, it's at the discretion of the governor that is in situ. There are quite a number of things that governors do with resources in their hand. Sometimes from their security votes, in their perception, they can decide that, okay, I want to be giving my predecessor so much. There is no law that says it is 1, 2, 3, 10 or 50 million, to the best of my knowledge, except in a few states where certain laws have been passed at the various houses of assembly. So if there was a 10 million in Zamfara State, I think it is, in my own opinion, I don't have the information, it may be according to the whips and caprices of the sitting governor who thinks that he thinks to look after his predecessor one way or the other. Let me also say this. I said it earlier on. Either a sitting governor or a former governor, they are the face of the state. And I don't think any indigene of a state will be happy to find, for instance, his former governor hopping into a Uber or things like this, or his rickety car is breaking down on the road. I can tell you when I was a governor, for instance, one of our predecessors, a former military and me, came to pay a courtesy call on me. And then by the time I escorted him outside and I saw the vehicle, I was quite ashamed. And of course, I found a way of, doing something about it. So these sort of things do happen from time to time, but I'm not aware that there is anywhere where somebody says somebody should get a certain amount for upkeep. It's at the discretion of the Governor Institute.
Well, in that suit that you quoted, filed by Serap against the federal government for failing to recover double emoluments from former governors who had served as ministers and, senators in the federal parliament, the figure quoted was to the tune of 40 billion naira. While, it's, not proper for former governors to retire to a difficult life, 40 billion naira is quite a number, a figure, particularly, within the context of the realities of today's economy. Don't you think that, others should tow your path?
Well, the others have their discretion to exercise their own discretion, but don't let us confuse the public with the figure 40 billion. How many governors are we talking about in how many states? So if you break it down, I don't know, since the advent of this current, in 1999, this current experiment, there are states that have had maybe 4 governors. In Ogun State, Chief Oshoba was governor, I've been governor, Amosu is governor, now we have Governor Dakwa, but already 4 governors. So if you look at that over 36 states, we are looking at how many governors, 120 governors or former governors as it were. Now, if you divide that into 40 billion, it may not be as huge as the way you are presenting it. But having said that, my own opinion is that it is better to even stop collecting the money now, rather than to now accumulate it, because I know how this country works. One fine day, one day or the other, everybody will have to refund it. So that's the way it's going to go. I know one fine day, there will be some more serious court judgment and people will be compelled to refund it. So why do you want to collect the money now cumulatively? You spend it and maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line, somebody comes and say, this money, you have to refund it. Where are you going to find the money? So it's better not to even collect now and try to survive than for you to now have to begin to refund cumulatively along the line. That's the way, and that's what I will advise my own colleagues, who may not particularly be happy. Because quite honestly, when I was writing the letter, I didn't even think of the situation of some of my other colleagues. Maybe also because the amount that we are talking about in Ogun State is really nothing. Maybe the people who may be feeling the pinch are people who probably get something more substantial. But for us, it was as if you were getting nothing ab initio anyway.
And Senator, winding down on this now, you also spoke about security, probably in passing. But at the moment, Plateau, Benue, they're going through this cycle again. Some killings, and well, several people will say, look, previous governments may not have done enough. And for this to continue means that we still have some ground to cover. Are you likely to bring up this matter on the floor of the Senate? What do you expect government to do in terms of how they approach this kind of matters?
Well, I'm not an expert on security matters. I am aware that this has been a major challenge in our country. The reasons are not too far-fetched, but I can confirm that they are quite complex. The only thing I will do or look at is from the perspective of getting people employed. Because I think that this security challenge are also economic to a large extent. Oh, there are religious conversations, all sorts of, but in the main, I think if we're able to tackle poverty and provide employment, it will have reduced this security challenge to a very large extent. So if I'm going to therefore advise, it's going to create systems that can get our people busy.
Well, would you advise this government, as we also close, to ensure that, or will the Senate insist on palliatives, and they should address it within a specified time such that people don't feel this impact so much of subsidy removal?
Oh, very correct. Whatever we want to do must be multidimensional, and palliative is quite key, because you need to solve short-term measures as you look for medium and long-term solutions. The short-term measures are palliatives, whichever way you look at it.
Senator Gbenga Daniel, thank you for coming on, and all the best.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's see. Do we have time for any messages? I'm not sure.
At least we have the messages. This one I'm going to quickly run through it. First, as Akim Boyewa says, the current eye-watering extravagant allowances we pay to our legislators that runs into millions of naira must be cut. Nothing can justify the extravagant allowance that is far much more than what they actually do, period. That's according to Festus Akim Boyewa.
Okay, well, we hear you. Olagunju says an overlapping benefit that is unjustifiable as it allows politicians to collect multiple sources of income from public funds. I understand the former governors and their entitlements vary among states, as the responsibility for determining these benefits lies with the respective state governments. However, we need to review and look at the various laws and policies, such as the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the remuneration of public, political, and judicial office holders, and state-level legislation that determine the case of double remuneration.
Well, this one is from Edmund Otuchikere. I hope I got your name correctly. And he says, constituency projects given to lawmakers, in my opinion, is another form of corruption. They got into the legislative chambers to make laws and not struggle for juicy contracts and committees. The proper thing is for the local government areas to budget for projects and advertise for competitive bidding. That way, contractors can be more relevant and active in the economy. I believe he has an ally in former Governor Daniel.
Can I ask you, Edmund, define juicy contracts? Anyway, you can do that by a tweet or something. That's so much of the program we can take today. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of your morning. Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Indeed. We enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Koka.
Thank you. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
And I am Chamberlain Uso. Goodbye.